Welcome back to the Casual Combat MMA Show, episode number 12. This week we will be previewing Rafael Dos Anjos versus Islam Makhachev and getting into kind of a little bit unique episode. As always, I'm joined by Cal Gerber, my wonderful co-host. Got his giant beard ready and primed to go for November, and it's been what now? You haven't shaved now in 8 days, so that is from clean face to that beard in 8 days.
And I did it fair, so I shaved the last day of October, so I'd be a true no shave November, and this is where I'm at. 8 days.
And I did the same thing, and as you can see, Cal and I are pretty close in our growth.
I just sit and squeeze my face a lot, and it comes out like that.
Yeah, maybe I should keep doing that, or start doing that. But last night we watched I will say a fair UFC card. I think there wasn't anything absolutely groundbreaking, but I think there are some narratives that we can begin to talk about. Cal, you want to kind of run us through some of the notable fights? Before you do, though, I will preface that all of my picks from last week were total hot garbage. But
yep, this is the second time I've done this. I tweeted out, I bet on a parlay, and I tweeted out, this can't miss. It's a 5-fight parlay in which 3 of them did, in fact, miss, which, I just never can believe it when I say it can't miss, and then it does miss. Yeah. The UFC did a really good job. Once again, I'd been picking the fights for the last couple, and I was like 10 for 12 and 11 for 12 in the last 2. So I finally decided I'd get back into gambling and betting on the fights, and that I lost all of my money, I bet, this weekend.
Good. That's always a great way to start off the week and making it a solid week.
But yeah, if you're looking for someone to give you picks to bet on, I got you good picks. So
absolutely. You might be able to be smarter with somebody else's money than you are with your own money.
Yeah.
All right. So
Alexander Romanov beat your buddy up.
Yep, my Rogerio de Lima did not look very good. He got his face pounded in, but it still kind of leaves a question about Romanov.
I'm like off the hype train after that fight because I'm not sure Romanov landed one strike on his feet. I mean, his game plan inherently is to just take down his opponents, which I think he's really good at taking people down. I think he's really fast for how big he is and really strong. But what happens when he gets a guy who he can't take down?
Yeah, and that is still to be answered. And I don't think it's a bad answer yet, but we just don't know,
Well, we need to see if anyone can stop him from taking them down because, God, the speed, and he changes level so well for how large he is, and he must just feel ridiculously strong. That was his 3rd time he'd got a submission. They call it a forearm submission, which shouldn't even be called a submission. It's just him putting his forearm across their throat and putting all of his weight down on him. And that guy was out cold.
Yeah, he was out.
He was submitted. He was lost consciousness without having anything locked around his throat, strictly from the force of a man pushing his forearm into your throat.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see Romanov now take a step up in competition.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's proven that he's better than the guys that he's clearly better than,
He's proved he belongs in the UFC. This is where he should be.
Yes, certainly.
Beating fighters who have won fights in the UFC, and he's beating a bad. But yeah, I'm excited. He's going to be a fighter for a while until the hype train stops, or I'm excited every time he fights because, 1, he's kind of unorthodox with his fight style, and 2, he's just still so much to find out about him.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so I was happy to see King Kong get the victory there. At the end of the undercard, I thought Trevin Giles looked he performed well.
I agree. Trevin Giles has almost gotten to the point where I will stop thinking about him fainting before the fight. I know I've mentioned it before. I've given him his due shit that he deserves for allegedly passing out in minutes before maybe it was his UFC debut, maybe not, but he's almost gotten out of the doghouse for me, and I will forgive him if he gets one more win.
3 in a row, then you can do no wrong then.
Yep. Then he's proven that he's not that scared of fighting.
To start the main card, we had Claudia Gadelha fighting Yan Jae Zhang.
Yeah,
right.
I think you did it better last week, but
I practiced last week. I'm not gonna lie.
But she looked really good.
I thought it would be worse. I thought Yan would look even better than she did. Now, she handily won the fight. I was surprised at times, though, that Claudia could control her when she did get the takedown. She had trouble getting the takedowns, but when she was on the ground, not that she was smothering her head, Yan in any trouble, she was able to control her, though, for a while.
Yeah, I agree.
But I may just be reaching for something.
Yeah, but also, a win over Claudia Gadelha is certainly, whether it is a dominant win or not, that's a good quality win in the UFC, especially for somebody who doesn't fight that often and has been fighting for so long, right? Like Yan Zhao Zhang, I'm not even going to try it. I don't have it in front of me. But is not a young fighter by any means, and for her to, have a solid win over somebody like Claudia Gadelha is a very, very solid performance.
Yeah, she always has a ton of output. I see here she landed 133 of 234 strikes attempted in a 3-round fight, and according to this, 74 more significant strikes. So I don't know. You're going to get some action and lots of punches thrown, which is something I like for sure. I think most of us do.
I like damage.
Next, we had Giga Chikadze. He looked as good as he could have with that first round KO.
Yeah, he looked awesome. I also, you and I both, I feel like we did a discredit, and I know it was a short notice fight, I believe. But his opponent, the Afro Samurai, from Stevens Point, a college that we are close to, wrestled against. Yeah. I did not realize that he was fighting Giga Chikadze. I don't even think we covered that fight last time. I don't even think we mentioned that Giga was fighting.
It was a late addition to the card, and originally was a prelim card, and then the Heinisch fight fell through, so they bumped this one up to the main card, which honestly, I think a fight with Giga Chikadze should be in the main card every time.
I agree, especially, and I think that, what's his real name? I keep calling him the Afro Samurai because that's his pen name or his surname, but
Jamie Simons?
Yeah, Simons. I don't
know.
Whatever his name is. I like him, and he's got some mutual friends of ours. He trains with one of our former teammates. But I think that he is due and owed another shot in the UFC against a more reasonable opponent. Giga Chikadze is like an established young kid that Dana likes, and he's surging. And I think to get pulled into the UFC for your UFC debut on short notice against a guy like Giga Chikadze, I think is a little bit unfair and not a true representation of where you're at as a fighter.
Yeah. On the other hand, for a guy like Giga Chikadze, what a great deal to get paid to go fight a guy for 3 minutes, go get a knockout, get a check, get another win. That's his second win of the
and build
month.
His hype. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love activity in fighters. I love it when they fight a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not much else to say. Brioni and Barcelos looked good too. I thought the power was there.
Yep, I agree.
Completely, in my opinion, he outclassed Taha on all fronts there.
Yeah.
He's another guy who I feel like we're getting a lot of these guys. He's another guy who I feel like I'm ready to see him fight a name now. I think he's showing flashes of power, and he's been putting people to sleep. This one was a decision, but he's been finishing a lot of people too. I want to see him fight someone who's going to challenge him and put him through give him some problems.
Yeah, I think right now the UFC is either doing a great job or a bad job. And I'll try to explain what I'm thinking, but like a great job at like building guys up and giving them a lot of winnable fights. But then I also think that you don't want to have so many guys who are just being fed easy fights, because then when push comes to shove, they're going to have to, show it. And I don't think it is a good look for the UFC to get these prospects and these rising stars big before they've had that test, because then I think you run into the risk of having, and not to say that Sean O'Malley is part of this, but, a guy that they put so much behind before they're actually proven. And then, and Eddie Wineland is a guy that Sean O'Malley, Eddie Wineland is a for real competitor. So to say that he was not challenged at all is not true. But, a guy like Cheeto is significantly a bigger challenge in this point of his career than Eddie Wineland. And, you see some of these guys and what comes to mind is Khamzat Chimaev. I think that he is for real. Like, I think that there's a reason why the UFC is getting behind him. But like we've talked about, there are so many guys like Romanov, guys that were like, okay, now we would really like to see them fight someone real,
Yeah, they're creating. I think they've seen some success.
They're creating hype trains.
They are, and like you look at the Sean O'Malley, his last fight was the co-main event because they created this hype train. And granted, Sean O'Malley is a good marketer of himself.
Yes.
But they're creating all these hype trains. And I think that works out in the short run, but for a pure MMA fan, when you are looking to see these guys get challenged, you're getting less excited about just the person themselves. You want to see them fight someone and see where they're at ability-wise, not just see them knock people out.
Yeah.
Then you're into some problems because the train gets real fast then when they lose, and you realize that they're in way over their head.
And then all of that work that you've put into them is now, not necessarily lost, but, I feel like the reward could be great. Like Conor McGregor was not a hype train, right?
Right.
Like, don't get me wrong. They knew what they had and they promoted him well, but they didn't give him this surge of energy before he was putting people, like real people like Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway to sleep. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he is their greatest hype achievement, right? And they didn't baby him up. I'm not sure that is the way to do it.
Yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe it's better if a guy like Sean O'Malley, instead of being 5-0 in the UFC with 5 finishes, was 3-2 to start and had some challenges, but was able to figure some things out instead of building this monster who has never been tested. And then when they do, they're not ready for it. They face,
exactly.
I don't know where else to go with that. I think it's an interesting conversation. I don't know what's right or wrong.
And I think that Khamzat Chimaev is an outlier, right? He is a hype train that I truly do believe that he is as good as he is being marketed. And I'm not saying that Sean O'Malley is not as good as he is being marketed, but when you look at top guys in every weight class in the UFC, they are absolute killers, right? And it is very feasible that Sean O'Malley may never be in the top 5 of the bantamweight division, right? Because you've got guys like Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw, Aljamain Sterling, Piotr Jan, and I'm sure there's many that I'm missing as well. But I mean Jose Aldo, like there are so many killers that Sandhagen, like it's at Marlon Moraes, like that weight is absolutely so deep that you might have this kid that you've got the hype behind, and not to say that if he doesn't crack that top 5 that he wouldn't have had a successful career. But, to put that hype train behind somebody that eventually the day of reckoning is going to come where he's going to have to either do it or not. And the way that the Cheeto fight went, and Cheeto is not that,
I think the day of reckoning for Sean O'Malley is his next fight.
I agree.
Depending on the opponent, if they feed him someone just for him to KO, then that's not it. But if they give him another person similar to the level of a Cheeto Vera, of someone 12 or kind of on the borderline of the rankings. And I think that's where we're going to find out a lot. And as a dirty casual, I love that we were talking about Sean O'Malley somehow on this episode.
Yes. Always works its way in. And also, maybe that's all the UFC wants, right? Maybe they see this is a guy that may or may not ever be a champ, but we see this opportunity where we could make some quick money off of him. And if he never pans out, then whatever. We made money off of a guy that maybe didn't deserve the money or wasn't good enough to do it himself. I don't know. And I'm not saying that is Sean O'Malley, because I'm a huge Sean O'Malley fan. Like, I'm bought in. I'm on the hype train. I enjoy it. His style's fun and dynamic.
Think about this. They were able to make a pay-per-view card where essentially they had 2 unranked fighters at that time fighting as the co-main event.
To DC Stipe.
Yes. And everyone was okay with that. So you think of it, they made something out of nothing, literally something out of nothing, and everyone loved it.
Yes. So maybe I'm changing my stance.
I think we kind
Maybe I
of
like hype trains.
kind of figured it out. I can't wait to get hired by the UFC and do all this.
Yeah. Maybe it's a win-win. They either make money from a guy that doesn't deserve it, and then if he actually is for real, then they make even more money.
And we're excited for a fight that otherwise we probably wouldn't really care about.
Exactly, which we will get to for next week.
Yeah. Then our co-main, I really want to fall asleep on the bar during this fight. And Andre Arlovsky meet Tanner Arlovsky. Andre Arlovsky.
I don't even have any words.
I want to go home. I want the O. I really want it to be Arlovsky, not Arlovsky. I don't know why.
Goodness. I'm laughing so hard that I can't even laugh.
I knew I can feel it because when you say Arlovsky, your mouth doesn't move that much. But if you want to say Arlovsky,
no, it's easy to say Arlovsky.
It is, but if you want to say Arlovsky, you know right away you're saying it wrong. You can't return from that. Arlovsky, you're screwed.
Oh my goodness. All right, I'll recap this fight. It was a snooze fest. Arlovsky somehow has won the last 3 of his 4. He's a bad man. He's a former world champion. He's the heavyweight champion of the world at one point, but his fights just aren't entertaining. He's won the last 3 of his 4, but who's he beaten? They pay him a ton every time he fights. I don't even think it's worth paying him versus, I bet he made $1 million last night.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know how he's making that much money. He should have to still fight those killers.
I know. I think it's something in his contract clause, just the former champ clause.
Mm-hmm.
I think all former champs make bank every time they fight. I don't know that for a fact, but
I don't know how. Say he's making $1 million. He made $1 million to beat Philip Lins and Tanner Bosser in a.
I know. That's just
in which he landed a total of 83 strikes between the 2 fights.
Dude, props to
the system.
Props to the champ, man. If he's figured out a way to keep doing it and keep making millions of dollars, props to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to see it.
Romanov, give him Romanov.
There we go. That's the fight to make. But then Romanov's still not.
I don't care.
Still not really getting tested.
I thought we were into the hype trains now.
Oh, maybe we're into them.
Beat him.
All right, and then main event.
Yep, Grandpa Teixeira got it done.
Grandpa Teixeira. Now, Glover Teixeira beating Thiago Santos, not only just beating him, but beating him in the way that he beat him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say outclassing him, but just being straight up tougher and a better fighter. He got rocked a few times on his feet. The guy's 41 years old. He clearly, he has a chin made of concrete, and it's ridiculous that he is competing at this high of a level. But now this opens up a can of worms, right? This is now the second time I'm going to talk about this, right? Promotion is just good storytelling, right? And that is a straight quote from Uncle Chael Sonnen, who I watch every day. But you have a story here now in Glover Teixeira, right? And he made a good case for himself in his post-fight interview, and he said, "Come on, Dana, I'm 41 years old. I'm not getting any younger, right? I'm on a 5-fight win streak. I keep beating these young guys. 2 guys who have lost split decisions. No, never mind. He didn't beat Dom Reyes. But I believe he beat somebody else who fought John Jones very closely, right? And he has proven that he is so elite in this light heavyweight division, and it's not like a fight between Glover Teixeira and Jan Blachowicz is not competitive. I think it's more competitive than the Israel Adesanya fight, to be honest. I'm very high on Israel Adesanya. I think that at best, this is a pick'em fight between Glover Teixeira and Jan Blachowicz, right? We just watched Glover Teixeira murk a guy that murked Jan Blachowicz within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's not like then, I'm bought in to the fact that a guy that will be probably 42 by the time that he would fight for the belt could finally get the belt, prove everybody wrong, and be this old guy that's just tough and likable and kind. be a UFC champion. And it's not to say that Adesanya then is sitting on the sidelines with nothing to do, right? We have Robert Whittaker, who has worked his way back up to the top and is ready for a rematch. And I would be so excited for another Adesanya-Whittaker fight.
Yeah, I want to backtrack just a second and also agree with you on how good Glover Teixeira looked. Not gonna lie, didn't watch this fight really intently last night. I had some other stuff going on around me, and I rewatched it this afternoon. And so when I first saw the submission, I saw someone tweeted, they're like, "Why would he follow Glover to the ground? That was such a bad idea." And I'm like, "Oh, I bet Santos was pounding him, and then he just got on the ground and got submitted." But that was not the case.
No,
He was beating Thiago Santos on all fronts,
except for the end of the first round.
Yes.
Or maybe it was the second round. I mean, Teixeira had him locked up in a rear naked choke that was going to end the fight in 5 seconds and just got saved by the bell.
The thing I think and I fell for it too, but the thing that would have made Thiago Santos is still an easier person, I feel, to market than Glover Teixeira.
He was before. Now everybody knows who Glover Teixeira is.
If you put him in a commercial with his build and all those tattoos, like, I want to see that guy fight. But I think
you wouldn't market Glover Teixeira as this badass killer. You'd market him as like the kind of tough old man.
He needs to be in somewhere like jumping rope in a dark room, like with all gray sweats on, just dripping with sweat about how hard, and then just this whole story about how hard he works. I think he would beat Jan right now. The thing is, maybe I'm wrong to say this, but I don't get that excited about any Izzy fight. I won't for the near future because I think it's going to be an Izzy KO.
Yeah.
But I think he's really going to be screwed by the system here.
But one thing that I want to backtrack even a little more is that in the post-fight interview, Dana White was like, I hear him. I think he's earned it. I agree. And I'm going to go back to the drawing board. The Jan versus Izzy fight is not set in stone. I think that and this is the fight that I would rather see. I would rather see Jan versus Glover than Jan versus Izzy. And I think that Izzy is obviously, I think, better than Glover Teixeira.
Yes.
And looking at it from Jan's perspective, I think Jan was figuring that Thiago Santos was going to win this fight. And I would rather get a big fight with a whole bunch of pay-per-views than fight Santos, who already crushed me. Right? I would rather fight Izzy. Even if I get crushed, I would rather not get crushed again by this guy and get paid less to do it. But now that Glover has won, now it's like, ooh, maybe I can defend my belt for the first time against an old man that isn't Thiago Santos, who already killed me, and it isn't Israel Adesanya. And then once I beat Glover, get a gem on my belt, then we can do the Izzy fight. Like, if I'm Jan, I think it makes sense for everyone except for Izzy. I think everybody would be happy except for Izzy.
But the thing Jan is going to lose is money in the pay-per-view sales.
But I think if I'm Jan Blachowicz, I think that I can beat Teixeira and then cash in on the Izzy fight.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just not. I don't know why I can't get excited for a Glover Teixeira championship fight, and it's not fair. I honestly, what I want to happen is I want Izzy to go take the belt from Jan, and I want John Jones to come back down and fight him for it.
But I think that can all happen later.
I don't want to wait on instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. I think it'll be made clear sooner than later.
Yeah.
They're filling up the start of the New Year's cards, and
yeah,
we're going to have some. I think right now we're in a kind of a lull here, but I think as we turn the corner to 2021, I think we're going to have a bunch of banger cards in a row.
Yes, I agree. And we spoke entirely way too long about this card. And we have a few other things. I think we're probably going to break up this episode into 2 videos this week. I think we're going to talk about next week's card and talk about some fighters that we had for that one.
Let's just end it after that. Then we'll do you and I will do another video.
Exactly. We'll do a different video, which we had a whole bunch slated, but I don't want to make this episode like an hour and a half long. But I think these were good. I like these conversations, and they just kind of came up organically, which is awesome. We ended up talking about Sean O'Malley for 10 minutes. But let's get on to next week's card, which is horrible. I'm going to be honest. And it's not horrible. And I've said it before in this episode. It's not horrible because the fighters are bad, right?
The fighters are bad.
I don't think the fighters are bad. I think a new person watching MMA could watch this fight card and be completely content and have a chance to see a banger of a fight or a cool knockout or all kinds of stuff. But like I said earlier, promotion is storytelling. And the UFC has done no storytelling for any of these fights, right? I'm looking at this main card, and on the main card combined with the prelims, there are only 2 ranked fighters, and they are in the main event. And the main event is a fair fight, a reasonably interesting fight between Islam Makhachev and Rafael Dos Anjos. But I'm going to be honest with you, I looked at the card, and we have our own podcast, albeit the Casual Combat podcast. Outside of the main event, on the main card and the prelims, I only know 1 fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, people watching this or people on Twitter could call me a casual and that I don't know the sport. But we, follow this very intently every week for the last year and a half at least, and I only know 1 of these fighters, and it's Louis Smolka.
Yeah. People are going to act on Twitter. You'll see that. People aren't like, oh, casuals who think this card is bad need to not be casuals. Well, no, this is a bad card. There's no getting around it. And I have a big problem with this card is most of these fights don't matter. They're between 2 guys with 6-7 losses who are 3-3 in the UFC, and it doesn't matter whether they win or lose. They're never going to be championship contenders. They're probably not going to be out of the UFC after that fight. It's just, it doesn't matter. I mean, with that said, it's an opportunity for all these guys to get a cool knockout or do something for themselves. But
I'm not saying that the fights that you could have a dog fight that's entertaining between 2 guys that you have no idea. Like I said, the fights themselves might be good fights, but I don't care.
But yeah, as far as this week, me sitting there being like, oh, I can't wait there's none of that really for me.
Yeah.
I can wait for all of these.
Yeah.
With that said, a guy I did dig in a little bit, I thought was worth highlighting was Daniel Rodriguez. He's 13-1. He's 4-0 in the UFC. He's got 2 finishes in the UFC and 11 finishes total. So 13 wins, 11 finishes. He's a -190 favorite. He has KOs. He has submissions. He looks like someone who you could get excited about a little bit. I would definitely keep an eye on him. He is someone who this fight does matter for. He's still only 4 fights in the UFC, and he's 4-0 in the UFC, so he's still on the way up. So that's something worth watching. He's fighting Brian Barberena, he's been around the UFC for a little while. He's 15-7. He's a +150 underdog. He's 1-3 in the UFC right now. In his last 3, he's 1-3 in his last 4, and 3 of those are via KO. So I think this is a good chance to see a knockout by Daniel Rodriguez.
Yeah, I agree. You know what? I don't know if I agree. The stuff that you said, I had never looked at him at all. I'm trusting you that I agree with you.
Based on what I said.
Based on what you said, I agree, but I don't want to pretend. I don't want to double down. I didn't know him before. I didn't know anything about him until you just told me.
I bet on your guy who you told me last week when I bet on Rahamis.
Yeah.
Because you told me, you convinced me in the episode, and I went and bet and lost money.
He only lost because his ear exploded, but we already talked about last week. I guess I don't have much to say about fighter highlight.
Do you remember when Sean O'Malley knocked out Eddie Wineland?
I do remember that.
Okay, keep going now.
Oh, that was just cool. All right, the guy that I chose, and hang with me, the guy that I chose to highlight is fighting on the prelims, and it initially started off because I was so underwhelmed by everybody on the card, and I saw this guy's nickname, and it is Skeletor. Right? His name is Rhys McKee, and he fights out of Northern Ireland. He is 24 years old. He's super young. He's a welterweight, and he's 6'1". He has super long arms. His overall record is 10-3, and in his highlight reel that I watched, he has finishes via clean strikes, clean punches. He has a head kick finish. He has a heel hook finish. He has a triangle finish, and he has ground and pound finishes. And he has a 100% finish rate in his wins. He has 7 KOs and 3 subs in his 10 wins. Now, here's where you have to hang with me. He is 0-1 in the UFC. But his only fight in the UFC was against Khamzat Chimaev. All right? And so I really can't hold his UFC debut against him. Because, as I've said already in this podcast, I am super high on Khamzat Chimaev, as is pretty much everybody in the MMA world. And a loss to him in your first, I believe he was a Cage Warriors champ. I'm excited for him to actually go out and essentially redo his UFC debut. And he's fighting Brandon Morono, who is 17-6. The guy has no notable wins, but he is 6-2 in the UFC. So he's a proven guy. And Skeletor is a slight underdog at plus 168.
His fight against Khamzat also was like on 7 days' notice.
Yeah.
Not that it would have mattered either way, but
I'm glad they gave him another opportunity.
Back against him, yes, I agree. They didn't really give him a guy who's 6-2 in the UFC. They still didn't really give him a fist by any means.
Yeah, no. But at least it's a better option than Khamzat.
Like we said, this card's it's kind of lame. So we're not going to do our typical cover every fight. We're going to highlight those two guys, give you something to look at, and then talk a little bit now about the main event where we got Rafael dos Anjos, who is a heavy underdog to Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev is a minus 550 favorite. He's 18-1. He lost his UFC debut, but he's 7-0 since. No really notable victories, but he's been pounding guys. It's not been close fights. And Dos Anjos has been around forever. He's 29-13.
Yep, the former lightweight champion of the world.
Yep. Most recently, he's lost to Leon Edwards and Michael Chiesa. And
that was up at welterweight, though, correct? And now he is back down to lightweight.
Yes.
Yep.
This may be his first return to lightweight.
It is. Yeah, he had a short stint at welterweight, and now he's back down.
Which
I believe he had a win over Robbie Lawler at welterweight.
And then he beat Lawler, then lost to Usman, and then lost to Covington, and Edwards. And then,
So
he did beat Kevin Lee like 2 fights ago, though.
That's still extremely impressive. And I don't think that the odds are right. I think they have the favorite and the underdog correct, but I don't think the discrepancy in the odds is right, which would be good for a bettor. You know what I mean? I think betting on Dos Anjos and him winning, although I think is unlikely, I think you get more money than you would deserve. Like, I think it's a closer fight than the odds setters.
Though, he is a plus 375 underdog. I think he should be more like a plus 200 underdog. So it's still not. I don't give him much of a chance in this fight.
Exactly. And the only reason that I say this is, and I'm going to preface this with, call me casual, I've never seen Islam Makhachev fight. Like, I've seen some highlights, I've seen some clips. I've never sat down and watched an Islam Makhachev fight. But the praise that he gets from Khabib and him saying that whoever beats Islam Makhachev, I will treat like, or he said it to Michael Chandler. He said, if you fight Islam Makhachev and beat him, you will be the number one contender. That's what he said. And that just means that I think that Islam is so good that if you can prove that you're better than that guy, then you deserve a title shot against me. That was before he retired, yada, yada, you know.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. I mean, obviously him and Khabib are friends, and he's trying to help his friend out. But
of course.
Yeah, I don't know. That fight is somewhat interesting. This is really Islam's first chance to prove that he is the real deal, because he is still. Is he unrated or?
No, he's ranked 12th.
Okay, but he hasn't had a chance to climb the ranks really yet, and now he can start climbing.
The loss in his UFC debut kind of put him back.
Yes, for sure. He had to build himself up then in, because I assume when he came into the UFC, he had some hype around him already from where he was coming out of and who he's training with, and then the loss, it's like, But now he's won 7 in a row, and he's got himself a big fight in a main event of the fight this Saturday.
Absolutely.
Oh, last thing before we get out of here. The Tapology group is going to be going this week. The link and stuff will be sent out either tonight or tomorrow.
Absolutely. So if you want to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be 10-week seasons?
We're going to do a 10-week season. You're going to pick, it's only UFC. You're going to pick all the fights. You pick how they're going to win and when they're going to win, and to get points for each thing you get right. Whoever has the most points at the end of the 10th week will be getting a Casual Combat t-shirt.
Absolutely. So if you are into fantasy football, fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, any of that kind of stuff, if you want to play fantasy UFC with us, please, we're going to pump this link out. We're going to probably clip this little video. Follow us on Twitter. We'll be talking about it on Instagram. And we'll be tweeting about it all the time as far as who's in the leaderboards. And it'll be really fun.
It's going to be a good time. No entry free. No entry, nothing to lose.
Yeah, we're not going to do money. It's just literally for shirt and bragging rights. So just kind of a little way to maybe engage a little bit with the community.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we got for this episode. Like I already said, follow us on all of our social media platforms and subscribe and like. Helps us out. Leave a comment. Tell us our takes are horrible. Tell us our takes are awesome. Whatever you want. It all helps us out. It's fun. It's entertaining. And we will see you guys next week.